Hey everybody, welcome to Home Recording Made Easy and Mix Tip Tuesday, where every Tuesday I show you a new mixing tip to help you make more professional sounding mixes in your home studio. Before we get to this week's tip, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit that notification bell and also stick around till the end of the video, because at the end of the video I have something I want to give you absolutely free that's really going to help you with your mixing training, so be sure to stick around. Okay, this week's mixing tip has everything to do with starting off a mix. When we first start off a mix, it is super important that we set up our workflow in a way that's efficient, that's familiar, and that will just help you develop a more streamlined process when you're mixing. And I want to show you how I set up mine, and you can take what you want from mine, but I encourage you to develop your own kind of workflow. Workflow is so important, so let's talk about that. So here we are in Studio One here, and we have a session of just imported audio files. There's nothing has been done to this mix at all. It's completely free of plugins, as you can see. All I did was drop the audio files in from my browser into Studio One. And if you don't know how to do that, you click on the browser button, you go over to the Home tab and you go to Files, and you navigate to a folder that's on your computer or an external hard drive, and you drag the audio files. You can just left click and drag them into your session. It'll populate on the tracks. That's step one. Step two, once I have my audio files in, it is super important to me that I color code them in a way that makes sense to me. And what I encourage you to do is to also color code your tracks. And you want to make sure that you pick a coloring scheme that's going to work for you for every single mix. I don't change it. It's been the same color scheme I've been using for probably 5 or 6 years. So let me show you. So over here in the console view, you can see down here in brown are all my drums. I always put my drums to the left, always first, going left to right in the mixer view, and I always put them in brown. No matter how many drum tracks there are, they're always brown. They're always the same shade of brown. I always put them in the same order: kick, snare, then the hi-hat. If there's hi-hats, then any tom mics, any overhead mics, rooms, and then if I have any kind of percussion instruments, in this particular session I don't, I would put that right to the very right of the drum. So all my drums and all my percussion is together, and my percussion track will also be brown as well. Next to that, I always put my bass guitar tracks. In this case, there's only one, and it's always the color of this blue. Next to that, I'll put any guitar tracks. I'll always start with my acoustic guitar tracks first, and then my electric guitar tracks, and they'll always be in some kind of a shade of green. And I'll kind of sometimes pick a different shade. If I have acoustic guitars and electric guitars like I do in this song, I might go ahead and I might pick a different shade of green from the acoustics to the electrics, just so I can separate them a little bit. So I have my acoustic guitars, I have my electric guitars down here. Next to my electric guitars, I always put any kind of keyboards or anything like that, pianos, keyboards, and they'll typically always be in the color or some shade of red. If I have two different sets of pianos, let's say like in this track, I have a B3 like an organ, and then I have a straight piano track like a grand piano. If I have that, I will use my organ tracks will be in this shade of red, and then my piano tracks will usually be some shade of purple, just so I can kind of separate them. But they're always sitting next to each other in the console view. Then after that, I'll have all my vocal tracks, and they're always in yellow. My lead vocal will always be to the left of all the vocal tracks, and then any background vocals from that. So I pick a color coding scheme. I use the same scheme every single time, so I don't even have to think about it when I'm editing, when I'm moving through the mix, when I want to turn up the faders up and down, whatever I'm doing. I can look at my console and I instantly know where I am. Then I also make sure that depending on how the audio files were delivered to me, I will go through and listen to every single track as I import it. I'll solo it and I will label it accordingly. Kick, snare, toms, hats, so on and so forth. A lot of times you'll get audio files that are labeled audio 1, audio 2, audio 3. Or there'll be really huge long titles that don't fit in the bottom of the mixer view, so you can't really read them. I try to abbreviate them and make them something so it's really legible and easy for me to see. Okay. Next to my tracks, my individual tracks, I always have a busing system. Now again, you can choose to use a busing system or not use a busing system. It's up to you, but I find it easier to do that. So I always have that right to the right side of my vocals. The last, at the end of my last vocal track, I'll have these down here in black. And you'll see I have my groupings of instruments. And these will change a little bit from mix to mix, but in this case, I have a drum bus, then I have an acoustic guitar bus. I will have, let's see, and I put them in the same order as my tracks. And I'll have my, so they're a little out of order, excuse me, drum bus, bass bus, then I'll have my acoustic guitar bus, then I will have my electric guitar bus, a keyboard bus, a lead vocal bus, and a background vocal bus. Okay, that's pretty standard. But again, that will change from mix to mix. And then what I do is I make sure that I route all of my groupings of instruments to those buses. So for example, we have our drum bus as our first bus here. All of my drum tracks, you can see here all down here in brown, are all routed to my drum bus. The bass to the bass bus, acoustic guitars to acoustic guitar bus, so on and so forth. Now again, you don't have to use a busing system if you don't want to. I find it very helpful so I can control the whole set of groupings, the whole grouping instruments, all the faders with just one fader here on the bus. Again, that's a personal preference you can choose to use or not use. Then typically next to that, I will always have parallel compression tracks. I don't have any here yet. I want to do that for you. And I use bus channels for my parallel compression tracks. Let me show you. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bus tracks, I'm going to have 7 parallel compression tracks. Whether I use them or not in a mix, it doesn't matter. I always set them up. So what I'll do is I'll right click here and I'll add a bus and I'll add 6 more of these two. You just right click, add a bus channel, 5, and then 6. And then what I do over here is I will highlight all of these and I highlight these, the color dark purple. Always my bus track, my parallel tracks, excuse me, are always in purple to the right of my busing system. And I label those accordingly. I mirror my busing system. So the first bus is going to be called P drums for parallel drums. Then the second one's going to be P bass for parallel bass, so on and so forth. So I have the same amount of parallel tracks as I do for my busing system. And if you watch any of my mixing courses on Home Recording Made Easy, and I have a course called The Power of Parallel Compression, you can learn all about parallel compression, when to use it, when I don't use it, etc., etc. But I always want to have it here because more times than not, I find myself using parallel compression, so I always want to set that up. Okay, so that's how I set up my console view for every single mix. It's always set up exactly the same way. Color scheme, the order of the tracks, so on and so forth. The other thing that I want to make sure that I do, another tip, is when you have all your audio files in here, I want to make sure that I have my marker track set where I have my start marker and my end marker at the beginning, at the end of the song. That's important for exporting. I also want to make sure that all of my tracks, any dead space or when we get to the end of the audio, that I have all kinds of fade ins and fade outs. And so I can highlight all those tracks here, make these a little bit larger so you can see them. I'll close my mixer and then I'll go ahead and I'll kind of scoot these in a little bit and then I'll just do kind of a fade out here just at the very, very end. And again, I might adjust that as we go through the mix, but just to set myself up with workflow. And then I'll do the same thing on the front end too. So we have a fade in and a fade out at the end of the song. So we don't have any kind of clicks and pops as the playhead moves across that audio. It's just a good practice to be in. Okay. And that is kind of how I set up my tracks. So basic workflow, this is the same look of my screen here. It looks the same every single mix. Now you can do this by setting up a template. Once you have all of your kind of things set up that you're going to use every single time, you can save this as a template. You can delete the audio on this particular session if you'd like, and you can save this as a template. And the way you do that is you just come up to File, Save as Template, and you can save this as a template. So the next time you have a mixing session, you can open up your template and a lot of this stuff is set up for you. And I'll have another Mix Tip Tuesday video coming up soon where I show you a customized template and how I kind of set up mine with effects, so on and so forth. But that just gives you kind of a starting point. So this week's tip, make sure you set yourself up with a color scheme, a routing system, and an order of the way you place and name your tracks to make it consistent from mix to mix. And that is going to help you over time get more efficient and more speedy around your your mix. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. Make sure you give me the thumbs up. Make sure you comment below and let me know some of your workflow mixing tips. I'd love to hear what you think below. Now, as I said at the end of the video here, I want to give you a free gift. If you click in the description box below, you go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. I want to give you 5 free mixing training courses worth about $210 US. 5 free courses. Go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Right on the home page is an orange button. Click on that. You'll create yourself an account at Home Recording Made Easy, free of charge, and you'll get 5 free courses to help you on your mixing journey. So until the next video, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Thank you for watching Mix Tip Tuesday, and I will see you next week. Take care.